There you go. We are live now.
And it is 8 o'clock. So you obviously were dormant.
So I'll stop sharing my screen. So potentially you'll have to refresh again, Peter. Maybe not.
Okay, no worries.
So, there we go. Hello, everyone. Make a comment. Let us know that you can hear us and see us. Yep.
Hey, Justin. Hello, Anne. Hello, Doug. Wow, they're flooding in. Woo-hoo.
Rob can hear us 5 by 5. Is that something I should know what that means? It. Oh, it's pilot speak. Which video's just vanished? Doug says video's just vanished. Has the video vanished for anyone other than Doug?
I can still see you.
Okay. All okay there. Sorry, Doug, it's just you. And I don't know how to help you.
Yeah.
So, over to you.
We've got a full house, got a quorum. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy... It's not me, it's you.
Oh, dear.
Okay, should we start again? Hello, yep. Good evening and welcome. I'm Pete Daly-Dixon. I'm joined on this webinar by my friend and co-founder, Peter de Villiers, and I'm going to say that's a guinea pig, but that's probably very good. William, and you have to forgive me, William. How do I pronounce your surname?
Guidry.
Guidry, William Guidry. So I will circle back to you in just a second. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is first of hopefully many what we're calling webinar case study builds, and the reason for them is to show both how simple and powerful Macanta is in a single webinar. So we're joined by a business owner who has found Macanta, however they've done that, and that's going to be one of the things I'll ask William. And we'll start off by talking about the business, and then we will map out what we're going to build in Macanta and talk about why we're going to build it. And in the course of the webinar, Peter is going to wave a magic wand, and lo and behold, you have got your magic wands handy. Yeah?
It's a reasonably slow magic wand, but one nonetheless.
And just as we go over the weeks, we're going to be working with lots of different businesses and different sectors and industries just to show how Macanta can add value to different kinds of businesses. So first up, he was banging on our door before we even launched. He was stalking and harassing me on my Facebook wall and urging us to launch on the 24th. No, William, it's...
he didn't believe the countdown timer. It's like, is it real?
And when we put the call out for people to hop on a call with me, just to have a chat about whether it made sense to do a case study build with them, he was the first person to book a call, so it seemed right and proper to for him to take the first session. So, William, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, just for the sake of everyone listening and watching now, and who are going to be listening and watching in the future, just tell us a little bit about your business, what you do, and what it is about Macanta that made you hassle us so much, and really what you're hoping to get out of this case study build.
Yes. So my business is called Diversified Robotic. with no S. We are an RPA, artificial intelligence company, and so
What's
we
RPA?
help. I'm sorry.
What's RPA?
Oh, RPA. I apologize. That's robotic process automation.
Okay, and what's that all
And
about?
what that does is it mimics the workflow of a human. And so
Right.
back office operations like data gathering, data consolidation, data entry, that sort of thing.
Okay.
In addition to connecting legacy systems like SAP and newer versions of various industrial CRMs, also estimation or reading handwritten invoices and putting that data into a computer
Okay.
system. So things that humans do that can be automated.
Okay. Right. Cool.
So that is RPA, and so we help small to medium-sized businesses grow by creating these digital employees that automate those business and back office processes.
Right.
And of course, that can save them some time and money, but it also lets them redeploy their workforce into higher value tasks.
Wow.
It reduces errors and it helps them to do to leverage their workforce. So we serve U.S. based companies in the range of 10 to 250 employees,
Okay.
and anywhere from about 500,000 to about 10 million in revenue a year.
Great.
And those various firms can be anything from CPA and accounting firm to Los Angeles World Airport. So we have a broad range of customers.
Right. I was going to ask if there was any particular kind of industry that you found, were quite receptive to RPA.
There's so many right now that we're having difficulty keeping up. To be honest, we're at capacity, and it's a newer form of I guess business tool that is really easy to implement if you have the right technological background, right? And so many customers don't exactly know what it how to do it, but they know what it does.
Right.
And so we've had a pretty good success so far with getting traction.
Okay, cool. And so just very briefly then, what was it that you saw in Macanta that made you think that it would add value to your business?
Yes, so I was an Infusionsoft certified partner for a while, and so I was very familiar with building automation inside of Infusionsoft. And then I was exposed to Macanta as kind of a front end overlay, if you will, so that those who didn't need access to all of the back end database tools and the admin access to Infusionsoft would be able to still access that data.
Right.
And so I thought that was just genius. And so in this case with Diversified Robotic, we have a lot of salespeople, and they need the data from Infusionsoft, but we end up having to get them an account and set up permissions and all the other stuff, and they inevitably want to create tags, and it's just a hassle.
Right.
And so I said, well, it'd be great if they could just access only their view and still be able to access information from the opportunities, contacts, and all the other information and custom tags, etc., inside of Infusionsoft.
Okay, so you still want to retain Infusionsoft in your business for marketing automation and things like that, but you also what you don't want to have to do is pay for 85 Infusionsoft licenses to get access to
just to get some basic information on updating an opportunity, for instance. And so what I was doing was using another tool in order to export that information into a Google Sheet and then create individual Google Sheets. It was a real hassle.
And create hacks and workarounds. Yeah.
Right. And so that's when I went back to Macanta and said, wait a minute, this would be perfect. And I saw the countdown timer and I was like, is this a coincidence or has this been up for 3 years? I didn't know.
Cool, great. Well, I know that you and Peter have had brief conversations before this call, just kind of scoping things out, making sure that we've got expectations about what can and when we can do a lot in the course of a webinar, but there's obviously a limit as well. So I know that you've done that. So now a good time to hand over to you, Peter, and you can take it from here.
Yep. So before I start, if you do have any questions as we go along, stick them in the chat. Pete will look after them and we'll address them all towards the end. so we can get as much of the build done as possible, and then we go from there. So I'm going to share my screen, and with a bit of luck, it'll work.
And maybe Peter, fill in any background stuff in terms of problems that we're trying to solve and whatever.
Yeah. So,
and I'm just going to refresh my screen.
Yeah. Pete has issues. Does anyone else have any issues? Can you see me? That's notes, Macanta, a Google Sheet. Can you just confirm you guys can see my shared screen?
Yep. You see that all right?
Anyone in the chat? Yeah, can see it. It's just tiny.
Click on the minus up in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, and it then makes it bigger for you. Okay. I wonder if the fuzzy aspect, Rob, might be your northern broadband. Okay, so what William and I discussed before this is just sort of the basic structure, and that's ended up on a Google Sheet. So what we're going to build here is contacts are contacts, and we take them for granted. And then we're going to have companies and opportunities, and specifically with the ability to link both contacts to the companies, contacts to the opportunities, and opportunities to the companies. So being able to create that whole picture. And I'm going to move quite quickly because, as with any of this, some of it is, for me, reasonably repetitive. I'll explain what I'm doing, but if I'm going to go and create 5 fields, I'm not going to explain it 5 times. I'll explain as I go on, but we will be moving quite quickly so that we can get as much info out there as possible. We
weren't joking when we said this was a live build.
Yeah. So
yeah. William just commented that they like to call opportunity a project. So that's
fine. We can do that. That's no problem. So we'll go for that, and I'll then go back here. So the first thing we need to get in place is to know what our relationships are going to be. Those are relationships to the companies and to the projects, so that we have those in place. So I'll go and create those first. So as ever, we go to admin. This is where we hope Virgin plays nice. And under admin, we've got the relationship tab, and I can then just go and create those. So
just while Peter's filling that in there, one of the key concepts of Macanta is that you have contacts, which we're all familiar with. We've also got these things called data objects, which is what we're calling them in Macanta. And the relationships that Peter's building in now are the relationship descriptors between the humans and the objects. So what are the possible relationships between the human and the project, or the human and the company? So you can see there we've got human might be a key contact, might be the sales agent, might be the referring agent. So all of these exist as contacts in Macanta, and they've all got their own individual relationship to the data object which we're going to be mapping.
Okay, so for each of these, I've just named them. You can put a description in as well. For our purposes here, I won't. William, are there, there we go, project manager and manager. That's fine. Any others that need to be in place, William?
We can always come back and put some more in if we need to. So that's good. There's no.
So I'm just refreshing because the rest of Macanta doesn't know about the things I've just created. So just to make sure it's all there. I then go to the connector. So now we're starting to create our data objects. And the first one we're going to create are our companies. And if I go...
And just so there's no, to avoid any possible confusion there, it says, I mentioned data objects earlier, and that tab that Peter just clicked on was connector. That's a bit of a holdover from when Macanta was an add-on for Infusionsoft. I came up with this term connected data when we first started talking about it. And as with most things, you have to be careful what you start calling something, because that actually becomes what it's known as. So with the launch of Macanta as a CRM in its own right, we've taken the opportunity to be a little bit more descriptive in data objects, but we've just got to wait for the interface to catch up.
Yeah. So first thing we do is create the individual items. So not the fields, are not related to anyone, but we're building the back-end structure. So we'll have companies. And then I can say, okay, what relationships can we have to a company? So William, if you can help me out, what relationships would relate to a company? Key contact.
Can William speak?
He was able to before.
You're welcome to speak, William.
Okay, great. So talk about the relationship to the company.
Maybe you can't with the...
Yeah. No, William was speaking. I could hear him.
Oh,
okay, great. So the company would have a key contact,
refresh.
sales agent,
Yeah.
and that's probably it. That's the main things that would define that,
Okay.
right?
And then could a company, one individual company, have more than one key contact and or more than one sales agent?
They can have more than one key contact, but only one sales agent.
Okay. So we can set now.
I guess you could also add, because there could be a referring agent and a sales lead for that company as well, because sometimes there's an override commission.
Yeah. And for those, would I be able to have more than one, or still just
No,
one?
you would have one for each of those.
Okay, so that's fine. So I'll go and start adding some fields. So go and add fields, and I'll talk through this. So the first one we're going to have is just the obvious company name. I could spell, it would be better. So company name, placeholder, we all understand, I think placeholder text is just when there's nothing, that's what shows. Helper text is more useful for some fields than others, where you can give some instructions to whoever's going to be using the interface of what needs to go into a particular place or what format, anything like that. So for company name at the moment, I'll leave that blank. Our field value, field type will just be text. Default value we won't have in this instance because it's not really relevant. So I'll talk through the rest of the settings. Data reference, we're going to say yes. And that is how we're going to connect the projects to the companies, because we're saying, okay, the company name is a data reference. Therefore, we're building up a list of companies so that when we come to the projects, there's a drop-down field called related company. And that will then, the more companies you put in the system, the longer the drop-down list will become. So that's what the data reference does for you. Required is obviously yes, no, or required. And then contact specific. Company name clearly won't be contact specific. The best way to think about a contact specific field is your seat number on an aeroplane. Everyone has the same flight number, the same departure, airport and time, arrival time and airport, same airline, everything's the same, but we all have an individual seat number. And that's what that function allows you to do, where you can have one data object, in this case company, you can have 20 people connected to that company or that data object. And then if it's a contact specific field, you view that company or that data object through the lens of a contact, and each contact has a unique value for that field, whereas non-contact specific fields, everyone has the same value and you just update it once.
Yeah, it takes a bit of getting your head round, mainly because I've just never seen it in any other system. But when you come up with a use case of needing it, it's flipping genius.
Yeah.
So then we've got users list header, which is just if you think about the top row of a spreadsheet where you've got your column names, that's really just what we have here. And we'll say, yeah, if we look at companies, we want to know the company name that is there. Then subsection we'll come on to. I'm going to leave that for the moment. The divider, the heading text, and the section name we'll leave for the moment. So without explaining that, I will carry on and add more fields, and then you can talk amongst yourselves, ask questions, and Pete can answer as best as he can. So we're going to have a company ID.
So it's interesting, Peter explained about the contact-specific field in the context of travel, because it was a travel company that had invested in Macanta. Were using Macanta in their business, and this was a use case that they had, which led to us actually putting contact-specific fields into Macanta, which has subsequently become a really key feature. They did group holidays, so you could, and they did walking holidays, so walking to the base camp of Everest and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and things. So they would have anywhere from 10 to 15, 20 people on a single group booking. So in the context of what we're looking at here, the group booking was a data object. Obviously, all the humans were contacts that were related to the group booking. There was the primary booker, if you like, the person that made the booking, and then other relationships. And there was a lot of information about each group booking that was obviously the same for each person. Like Peter said, if you're going on a flight, everyone is on the same plane, the same flight number. But obviously, each individual's got their own passport number, and so we built in the contact specific to allow this client to be able to track the contact specific elements of a group booking without having to get into the issues of replicating the group booking, because there was actually only one. So I don't know if that's helped or hindered your explanation, but
I just need to interrupt you for a moment. William, do you actually want the company address to be individual fields, or can it just be a field of company address and then have all those fields? I'm just thinking further down the track for the automation where we can copy it off the key contact if that's appropriate.
You mean like for street address, city, state, zip code?
Sorry, say that again.
You mean, do we want a separate field for things like street address, city, state, zip code?
Yeah, on the company itself rather than on the contacts connecting to the company.
Yes. So if I have it on the individual, on the company, can we create contacts from the company that is automatically populated? If not, then I want it to be separate fields.
Okay, so I'll keep it separate for the moment. That's fine. State and postal code.
It's working. So when we talk about contact specific, so if I'm using another example, let's say, for instance,
I picked up Rob's fuzziness of screen. It's not.
Pete, I don't know why you can. Is Pete the only one who can't hear William when he speaks?
Oh, probably.
If someone can just tell us in the chat whether they can hear William when he speaks. Everyone can hear William except you, Pete. So.
Shall I plug in Ethernet, see if that makes a difference?
Yeah, you can try that. Sorry, if you carry on, William, I'll answer. And
another example, if I'm looking at contact field, if I had a customer ID that was or project ID that was unique to each project, but still part of that customer that customer's workflow, right? Would that be an example of a contact specific field?
Not so much, because if you have, sorry, so you said you've got different.
So we have a project ID for each project that's associated with a single customer ID.
Yeah.
So the customer ID goes to the company, but the project ID is unique.
Yeah. So in that instance, the project ID would live on the project itself.
Okay.
Rather than on the contact or on the company. So I'm going to just copy your options. Say that. Then origin. We've lost Pete. He's abandoned the calls. And we've got this field called use case. What else do we have? Work type.
I seem to be able to hear William when I turned my video off.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah? William, would you just say something?
Pete.
No, can't hear him.
Pete can't hear William, so.
Doug, it was just whether you could hear William or not when he speaks. That's what we were asking you to confirm.
So those are, I believe, all the fields that we want for the moment. So we'll get into the more finer settings of those now. I'll refresh so that you can see what we've done. So we've added that data object, and you see a tab has appeared here for companies on the left-hand side. And when we go in there, then we have all our fields, but that's a bit of a mess. They're not really grouped or anything like that. So we can now go and create subsections where they appear in columns, and it can just be a bit clearer for that. So if we go back to our connector, and we go to our fields, then our options here are, do we want to create a subsection? And the subsection will end up being a column, and the section will be a drop down that we can break those down in. So I think because it's a company, William, and we don't have that much information, it makes sense to just keep them as 4 subsections and group the different fields together. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I would group industry, origin, use case, and work type as one column. And then I would have postal address as a column. It looks like we'll only have 3 because we can then have a overview column, which will have company name, ID, phone, and fax. Does that sound all right?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, so I'll call these overview. All we need to do is go all the fields we want in that particular subsection. We just need to make sure they have the same text in the subsection. I'll put website in there as well. And then we'll go address. I can hear you typing in anger feed. I don't know what. Hopefully it's not addressed it off because you can't see it. Okay. And then these last four fields, what would we call that subsection, William?
Called, let's see, I think I actually named that on the other side here. One moment. I just put a placeholder in it for now. I can always change it.
Yeah. What would you like it to be, the placeholder?
Yeah, let's see here. Apologize, I lost your screen.
Okay.
There we go. So I would call that type use case. Just put definition. Let's go with project definition.
2F or 1? Is that right? Definition, 2F?
Yeah, let's go with project definition.
I'm just trying to spell it. There we go. Okay, so we save that, and then I'll refresh again. And if I then go to companies, now we've got those in columns, and it's a lot more user-friendly and manageable, and you'll see whatever you put in the subheading or the subsection text is what it's labeled at the top. Now, it doesn't necessarily make sense on this interface, but you do have the option to create divisions within the columns, which will be just grey dotted lines to break things up, and you can also put section headings within these subsections. But I think for this, just because there isn't that much information here, I think that'll probably do for now.
So like below website, I could put in a gray bar and put in notes there.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
do something like that. Yeah,
great.
You can certainly add that in. So that's really, I mean, I don't know how long that's taken us, maybe 20 minutes. We've created that. We've got our relationships. So if I now go and say we move on to creating the projects, just before I do, does anyone have any questions?
Doesn't look like it.
No, doesn't look like it, so I'll carry on. So we'll go over to our project. So again, same process. Add another one, call it projects. Now, again, relationships. For a project, William, what relationships are specific? Obviously, project manager.
You would need a key contact, a sales agent, a sales lead, a developer, referring agent, possibly a referrer, and that should be it.
Okay. And can I have more than one of any of those?
You can have more than one developer.
Okay.
And you may have more than one key contact.
All right. So let's go and add. Here's my spreadsheet for projects we have. So in this instance, we can either go by related customer ID as our, I know we set up company name. So if I go and say, excuse me, related company. Now you'll see under here at the bottom, we've got a data reference field type that wasn't there before. because we created our companies as a data reference field for company name. So I go and select that as my field type, and that will then be a drop down, but will always contain the list of all the companies in the system. So the rest of that I will leave for the moment, and then we move along. So stage, yeah, you've got those there.
Let's give a shout out to Christian Wiles for that. He's on the webinar. I know he had a client that led to the implementation of data reference, and Christian both designed it and had one of his developers implement it into Macanta. So it wouldn't be there without you, sir. So thank you.
Oh, very nice.
I missed one here.
So here's an interesting association. So we have our existing data has a customer ID already associated with the customer, and we need to have that connection whenever we move the data over, right? So inside of the company, it needs to have a field for customer ID, or company ID, same thing, and that would have to connect to the opportunity as well.
Okay. Yeah. So we want to potentially have I reckon we can automate that. I'll think.
Okay.
For that. So stage, and then we'll have referred by as a relationship. Now the question I have here, the referred by, the relationships will show for the project. Do you actually want that contained in a field on the project as well, or are you happy to just be able to see it when you look at the project?
No, we'd want that to show, because our accounting folks also often look at that and make sure they match up with the payouts. So they want to see the referring agent, the sales agent, sales lead.
Yeah. Okay. So referred by, will be text, and sales agent. So you want the sales agent and the sales lead name to also appear.
Correct.
Okay. And automate. Okay, and then we've got commission for each of those. Is the commission always a round number, or do we need to allow for decimals?
It's always a round number.
Okay. Sales agent, sales. Yeah. And then we're on to the section for project info. Good. Bot type, if it's a long list, we can populate it later with more options. So for the moment, I'll just say bot type 1, 2. Unless you did add it on the spreadsheet, no, I missed. So that's fine. Developer can again be auto-populated. So What would the options be for priority? Can you still hear me, William?
That is a numeric value, actually. That's a whole number.
From what to what?
That would be from 1 to 25.
Okay.
And I think you were looking for bot types. Those are in the chat.
Fabulous. I'm going to add those in. Priority. Bot name will just be free text, I imagine. And trial start date. I'm going to assume there are still people on this webinar, but it feels really strange to be doing this thinking someone's watching. It's weird. So I'll go and say that. And then if we go through and there's two things we can do here. So we've got here basic info overview as a heading, and we've got project info as a heading. So everything up to referring agent, now you'll get to see the sections and the subsections come into play. So if we go here first for this, we now use the section function. And then we go for project info. I don't know what you're laughing at, Pete. I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else can.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I don't know if you saw Anne's comment. It said it's like you're a chef on a cooking show.
I was cooking dinner earlier, but so keeping in mind the columns that we have for subsections, William, what would our subsections be here? For my money, I'd go with related company stage and referred by in one, and then the sales agent lead and their commissions in one, and then of course we've got the project stuff after that, but I'll take my guide from you.
By in the group with the sales agent and sales lead and the commission values.
Okay, so we'll have one that's just got the two, and this is going to have stage and related company in it. What shall we call the section? Or the column?
Let's see. Stage and related company. Let's make that status.
And then the referred by down to the referring agent commission.
I would put that as probably just I'd probably say just call that sales.
Okay. And then these ones, do we need them to be in?
I would call that tech ops because that's their stuff.
Okay.
So,
like that?
TECH space OPS.
And just all those fields together.
Right.
Okay, so not overly saved. And now we've got a second tab on the left for projects. And when I go and have a look at that, we now, whereas under companies, we've just got one section and it loads like that. Under projects, we actually have those two sections and I can view those details as I need to. One of the reasons you might want to, when you're building something like this, break it up in those sections is with our user management templates, you can have control over these sections. So you can have someone can see the section or not control, but you can then also have that if I'm in the section, I can see it, but I've got read-only access or I've got read-write access. So it just depends on what information you're displaying, how you might want to control it. Keep that in mind when you're grouping these things together. But for the moment, that's then your opportunity, and obviously we can add more fields as we go. So I think at this stage, what I'll do is let's create a couple of companies, and then we create a project, and then you can see the reference data and the relationships and everything like that. I just want to check. I'll do this in the backend database because it's quicker. I just want to see we don't have any contacts in, so I'm just going to add Cats and whoever else into that so that we can have some details there. Anyone, any questions from the hungry audience waiting for their meal? Either you have, what's for dinner? It was, we can't hear you, Pete. I don't know what you do. Doug's got no questions. Dinner was a really nice Thai style haddock and noodles, and that feels now a long time ago. So, so first I'm going to add some contacts because we do need some. So Erwin, our trusty friend.
I like the Schrodinger reference, by the way.
That is actually the name of one of my cats.
But is he alive or?
Well, it depends on his behavior, really.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, Pete, but in staging, Erwin appears a lot working for a company called Alive and Dead. You know that.
I did see that in the videos on YouTube. Yeah. I saw that. It's funny.
I've got something topical. I just can't get it.
Oh, it's so good. He's leaving. So I'll add a couple more here.
If you can see that.
Oh, nice.
That's very good. I need one of those.
The quantum paradox. It's just pure comedy.
So we'll stop with that. And we'll go and create a couple of companies. So I'm going to say family will, so now I can say add new company, and the company name here is going to be, you can go with Blue Peg. Company ID, in this instance, I'll put something in, but we do have the ability to auto-generate that if we want to.
Nice.
I'll choose some details here at random. So random, it's the first in the list. And then I can say here, what's Amelie's relationship? So choose the key contact. I'll save that. And let's go and find Erwin. And we want to create another company. And he will work. Then and he's also going to be the key contact. Okay, so we've got the company, we've got details. We can then go and add another contact here, and I can say, okay, it's Olivia. And then what does she do? She's going to be a sales agent. And save that. So that's how you can then always have a view of who's actually related to what company. And if you look at Olivia's contact, you'll see this company. If you look at Erwin, you'll see this contact.
Nice.
So that moves around. And let's say you've got someone who is related to two companies. Then when you look at their record, you'll see both companies and you'll be able to choose what you want there. So if I refresh that, then we should be able to go and create a project, and you'll see we can then choose who the related.
That's nice, because in some cases we have an advocate relationship whereby we private label a product for a firm, and then they resell that product, and so they're not only the sales agent, they're also the advocate for the other entity.
Yeah. So they'll have a relationship with more than one company.
Right.
At the end of the day, for that. So if we just go here, I can then say we're going to add a new one. And I can go and choose, well, it's the red one. And obviously, every time you add a company to the system, this list will get longer.
Sure.
And you'll get, and I need to go and change that. There's a spare comma. So then what we're going to do here, Erwin's relationship is that he's the key contact. And then just to give an example of some automation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect a sales agent to this. Let me save that. And I can connect here, let's say, Emily. And she's going to be the sales agent in this instance. So the automation isn't built yet, but I think we can go and do that as the next piece. Anybody not clear on anything? Any questions before I move along? Christian had to run. Nope. Let's move along. and we'll go into admin. So if you don't know yet, Macanta runs completely, the automation is run on an if this, then that basis. Rather than, it's not a graphical interface and it's not lots of spiders and everything that you build. It's just a simple, if the data meets this criteria, then take this action. And that obviously also then relates to these data objects and the relationship that different people have to those objects. So what I want to do is, and we can do this for all the different relationships, but what we want to achieve is that whenever there's a sales agent connected to an opportunity, to a project, their name is automatically populated into that field there, and then we can do the same for referred by, sales lead, and the developer, and everyone like that. So I always build these in reverse. So from the right-hand side, the action webhook here is if we wanted to send information to another piece of software as a webhook, whether that's to Zapier or to an API that you've got, anything like that, which in this instance we won't do tonight, but the next step for that is then the trigger action. And I always stick with a naming convention of remembering that it is if this, then that. So the trigger action is the then that part. So I would just say set sales agent name. That's the action we're going to take.
Yeah, so you give it a label which makes sense after the word then.
Yeah.
Then set sales agent. Something's going to happen, then you're going to then set sales agent name.
Makes sense.
So this is going to be affected for projects, and the connected relationship we want is the sales agent. And then I can go and say, okay, I want to set the sales agent field. Now here, we will shortly be producing a list, but at the moment I just know that the merge field for that would be cd dot, and then you can just type the field spaces if you want. Sales, so this is going to be, it's actually the contact we're merging, contact dot first name space contact dot last name. And that, so what that will do, it'll automatically merge in the contact that has the relationship of sales agent. It'll merge their details into that field, and we can say save that. So that's our then that aspect. Then we go and build the if this. So what we do in this case, if sales agent not set, then it's a project, it's the sales agent, and I'm going to say if the sales agent field is null. Now you can decide here, are you likely to change sales agent a lot on these kinds of projects? Then what we'll probably do here is say, okay, sorry, did you say no?
No, we don't typically change the sales agent once the project starts.
Okay, so we can do that, and then we can save. So what we're saying here is, and I've just skipped something which I'll come back to. We're saying that if there's a sales agent relationship on the project and the field says sales agent is null, that's our if this criteria. And then what we do here is we say, we're going to say 1 minute. And the restart after is basically, do we want this action ever to repeat? So in this instance, I'm setting it 1 minute because I know once that field is filled in, it then won't repeat. There are, let's say, for instance, we want to send a reminder because a trial date is coming up. If we want to send a reminder the day before a trial date, then we'll set the restart after to 1 day, because we can only once per day can the trial date be tomorrow. And then when it gets to tomorrow, it'll ignore it because the date isn't tomorrow anymore. So you know one day will work. Sometimes you set it to never. It just depends on the use case, because there are some things you would like, for instance, setting the project ID. If we're doing something like that automatically, then you don't want that to repeat. Once that number has been set, you want it to stay as that. So we can then just go here and have that. Now I'll refresh, and then I'll just on my other screen open this. So now that we're back there, so now we're going to connect those bits together, the if this and the then that. So we're in the automation groups, and we know that this is a piece of automation specifically for projects as opposed to the companies. So I just give it a name based on the data object or the section within a data object if it's quite complex. And then I just go and say, if the sales agent is not set, I can set a wait in. There are scenarios when you get into more complex triggers where you want to say, well, if this happens, wait a minute or wait a day or whatever, and then take an action. In this instance, we can run it straight away, set the sales agent.
Oops, I lost Peter's screen.
So we're going to be submitting a support ticket to Demio. And last week, Peter didn't realize that he wasn't on. He thought that he was still connected to the webinar. So, it's some time out at 1 hour. A little bit after this time, I think. Maybe not. It shouldn't do. It shouldn't do. We've got a proper account. Anyway, I've texted him. Was it 1 hour and 1 minute? Okay, interesting.
I am back.
Great. I can't see your screen. I don't know if you're sharing it or not.
No, I have stopped sharing. It seems to cut out.
William made a comment that it cut out at 1 hour and 1 second.
Okay. Is anyone else there? It shouldn't cut out, as far as I know.
Yep, people are still here.
Yeah. Okay.
It just seems to be the screen share.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sharing again, so if
I got it. I got it first time this time.
You got it? Okay. So we're back, and everyone's here. So what I now don't know, has anyone seen the result of the automation that I was building? How much of that have you lost? If anyone can confirm. We did not. I just want to clarify how much of me building the automation was lost in the 2 minutes that we disappeared.
Oh no, we saw all of it.
You saw the build, just not the result of it.
Yes.
Okay. So we can do that again. I'll clear this field and it'll run straight away. So the rule, if you remember, we set up is if there is a contact with the relationship sales agent on a project and the sales agent field is blank, then what we wanted to do is fill that related contact's name, first name and last name, into that field. So that just takes.
And just remind us why we're doing that, because if you've got the contact related to the project by virtue of a data object relationship, why are we also populating that custom field?
My understanding from what William said was the reason we've got that is if we're going to, you can see the sales agent has been filled with Amelie's name. If you're running a a Macanta query and you download that as a report, or you send it as a report to the accounts team, and they want to reference for a project who was the sales lead, the sales agent, that makes it really simple, because they don't have to come in and look at the project here to see who the sales agent was. It can just be part of their inline editing, and they can update and make sure that it's the right person on the right project getting the right commission.
Right.
And so it's for a function outside of Macanta that is there.
Okay.
So we are back live. Is William still with us?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm mindful of the risk of boring everyone with me doing the repetitive stuff several times, because, for instance, on the project, now that I've shown you how to create the automation to populate that name, it's the same for that name and that name. And when we get to the developer, it's the same for the developer. So I'm not entirely sure it's the best use of everyone's time to see me do the same thing 5 times.
Sense which are different.
I'm just trying to see, not without digging into the wider process of what actually happens inside William's business at this stage. Just wanted to fix something.
So if you, in that case, when you're building automations, that means that you can make as many if-thens as you want and as many then-thats as you want, and you can mix and match them any way you want.
Yeah, that's the important bit. The way it's set up is that you build whatever ifs you want and whatever then that's you want, and then it's a bit like a patch bay, and you then just create as many of those as you like, and you can use the same ones multiple times. It's not that because I've used sales agent here that I now can't use it again. So you can have these different triggers that you can then trigger multiple things off, depending on what you need to do there. So you can, for instance, if you change a stage on a project, or you set the bot type to be that, you can then set it up so that 3 then that's happen based on 1 if that makes sense.
Yes. Can you also do Boolean on the if this, so that it's an or?
Yeah, so we can go in and I can show you that on the condition, where I can then say, okay, in this instance, if the sales agent field is null, and then I've got the option to and or, and I can say and another field, or I can say or, whatever the scenario is. This isn't a good use case for that particular field, but yes, you can make those up as well.
Great.
So what I would ordinarily do next is I would go and complete those automations for those items, and then obviously have a more extended conversation with you about the particular process in your business and what those additional automations would be. And then the beady-eyed might have spotted that under our trigger action, there is also the option to assign an email to be sent when this action happens, which for you and for everyone else will be live next week. And how that will work, the same way that I can create a webhook, and I'll just do an example of this. So this will be test webhook, and that's just going to go a URL, and I'm going to say it's for projects and for the key contact relationship. And the reason you choose the contact relationship here is because we're going to send data out, and we need to know which contact are we pulling potentially that data in from, because if we're sending first name, last name, email, it will be of the contact that has the key contact relationship to the project that triggers this. But let's say, for instance, we'll just send first name as an example. If I go here, and then I'll go and refresh, I can then make that part of a then that. And so I can go and build loads of different webhooks, sending different information to different places. And then I can decide when that needs to happen, which in this instance, I can come to trigger actions. And I can then say here, send that webhook. And obviously I'll build up a list. And then I can say, well, when you're setting the agent's name, also fire this webhook. And a week from now, you'll be able to say also send this particular email. And again, same as the webhooks, same as the if this, then that, the emails will also just be Lego blocks. So if there's a date confirmation email, like a meeting confirmation email, for us in our business, part of our process, there might be 2 or 3 different calls that people can book. We only need to have one call confirmation email, and then we can use that in multiple trigger actions to send those emails out as and when it's the right thing to do.
Nice.
So everything sort of, you build an inventory of things to trigger or to be the condition for a trigger as and when you need that.
So that's probably where I think I would have an internal naming convention for trigger conditions, actions, and for webhooks.
Yeah, that's that.
So that list will get pretty long after a while.
Yeah, and it doesn't show that clearly on here, but you do have a search box appears so that you can sort of whittle down to the one that contains something of what you want. But you're right, over time, those lists can get quite long, and trying to trawl through them then becomes a bit tedious.
Easily export, how would you describe it, Peter? Kind of the
almost like a wireframe of the if this then that's that you've built, so that it's easy to get an overview of all the automations that go on in the system without having to go and look. Because what happens here is obviously the naming convention, you can clearly see here, sales agent not set sales agent name. But what you can't see here, and we may do something about that, is you can't see here whether a webhook or an email is also triggered, or whether we're setting 3 field names, or however
Right.
that is. But that's more things for further down the road to keep getting better. But yeah, so do you or anyone else have any particular questions beyond what we've done?
Rob's comment was, it sounds like we need a part 2, and maybe that's what happens, is that we start the build on one webinar, and
show the result
on the beginning of the next.
Yeah, because the same way, just to quickly cover this, the same way that we were able to merge Amelie's details into this project info here as the sales agent, we can then also do it for companies, which we do in quite a few of the systems we've built. Is for these address details here, we can have a checkbox that says, is the key contact address the same as the company address? Because a lot of the time, the key contact works at the company's location, and therefore you don't have their home address here, but you actually have their office address. And what you're then able to do is build the if this then that if you tick yes, you don't have to fill the rest in, because the automation will auto-populate it from the key contact's address into the details here.
I see. So in that case, it would just be another field that is a checkbox.
Yeah.
And then you label that field, and then you can run the automation from the status of that field. Perfect.
Yeah. So that's the kind of things that's been possible.
The address at the top of the screen, Peter, just show that, the billing.
Yeah. I scrolled up the address that would show up there.
Yeah. There's a delay on your scroll. You just got to slow down a bit.
Okay. Sorry. The chef's worried about burning the egg, you see.
And of course, there's automation that's associated with each step, right? So in the front part of our workflow, there's the sales is more intense, and then it passes over to tech ops, and then that phase is more intense, and then it passes over to accounting and billing, and then that phase is more intense for them. So we build that through the automation of how that gets passed and who gets notified at each stage.
Yes. So what you'll there's obviously there's 1,000 granular things that we'll add into the back end of this, but yes, you can then say, well, okay, if a project status is set discovery, then you can create notifications or whatever you need to, again, around the relationship. So you can say, well, actually, when it is on pending requirements and it's been in that stage for more than 2 days, fire off an email to the key contact because we are waiting on stuff.
Right.
Right. And at the same, or you can say at the same time, okay, it sends an email to the key contact and it sends a notification to the sales agent to say, you might want to follow up here because we're stuck on something at the moment.
And so could we also have, if for each stage there are key requirements that need to be met before they can move to the next stage? Well, I would say for most stages. For instance, letter of intent is signed at one stage. So whenever I select that stage, can I have that stage's key requirements appear below that the stage label?
Not dynamically at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, we don't have that functionality, but just thinking what's the best way automatically. Because it's interesting. It's on our Trello board to have those contextual, that if this field equals this, show these fields.
Right.
It's just not been implemented yet.
Okay.
But it's on the cards. And then just one item that we can quickly cover is we've got the section here for file attachments, which the key thing to remember is that these files are attached to the project, not to the individual contacts of the project. So that whenever you look at any of the contacts and you look at the project, you'll see those files. You don't have to look at the key contact in order to see the attached files. It can be anyone. So whether that's a spec sheet or a diagram or anything like that, you can house it all in the same place so that whenever you come and look at the project, these things are all held together.
So in that case, for each of our projects, we have a separate service order agreement that's docu-signed and brought back in. So that would get associated with the project, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this file box here is, and you can also, you've got the same for the company, and this will then be associated with the company rather than the individual project.
And then you have the individual that would have their NDA signed. So a salesperson has an NDA that gets signed. They have their own file box as well.
No, there isn't a contact file box. It's all related to companies and projects.
Okay. So we would have to have perhaps a naming convention for that file so that it designates whose MNDA that is for that company or that agent inside the company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whose part that is. But yeah, so I think that's probably quite good, unless there's anything glaringly obvious.
You could have a contact level file box by creating a data object that was contact custom fields, and every
if you had contact information or additional like that, the only thing for me is I immediately just think, well, that's a bit of a hack rather than actually having a contact file box. I'd rather add to our list that at some point we have a contact file box, rather than do it that way, because you don't want to create that data object almost solely for the purposes of attaching contact-specific things to it.
Yeah.
Right. So like each of our salespeople would have their sales agent contract that outlines their commission as well as their mutual NDA, and their like scanned copies of bank records and stuff like, or direct deposit stuff that they need.
Yeah,
all of that stuff is in a file box right now.
Yeah, so if you what Pete suggested would work if you also hold other employee details. So you can, for instance, you can have a data object which is not which is specifically only ever applied to employees, or your
Right.
sales, or your sales team, and then yes, they would each have an individual, and therefore there will be one relationship, and there can only be one person connected at a time with that relationship, and then you can attach all those documents to it, so that then when you look at a contact, you see it, and you can then get access to and add to those files. So yeah, you can do it that way.
Does that make sense, William?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the data object would be sales agent information.
Yeah.
And then put the fields that I want in there, and it would have an associated file box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll just have a single relationship,
right,
for that. And then you've got the added benefit you have there then is you've got the same level of automation power that you have for everything else associated with that information. So whether it's contract renewals or anything like that, you can then automate that process as well.
Yeah, that sounds good, because offboarding can be as difficult as onboarding. So sending out the appropriate forms and insurance notifications, etc.
Yeah. And then, of course, you can restrict access so that when a sales agent logs in here to work on opportunities and projects, that the data object tab for that information just is invisible to them.
Right.
So that it becomes more of a back office business administration section to the interface rather than front facing to the employees themselves.
And so when you're working with that, the data object that is let's say a sales agent, that's a relationship, but it's also a data object, correct?
Yes. So the way we have here, let's say it's like this. They'll have the relationship of whether it's sales agent or employee or whatever you want to term it. That would be their relationship to that data object. The information is stored in the data object, and only
and
one.
How do I control the visibility?
The visibility is a very good question. So that is under user management, and we use user templates. So here you'll
okay.
If I go in here, I can say, okay, let's add a new template, and I will call this sales agent. And then I can say, okay, so to the tabs on the left-hand side, this one, I've got read-only access or read-write access. Global access is a future function, but so you can decide, well, okay, no, I don't. If you don't have read-only or read-write or global, then the tab just doesn't exist for you when you log in.
I see.
Or you can have it that, okay, fine, an agent can see their own details, but they can't change any of it. And have it that way, so you can decide what. And the same, in the project we've got the two sections. So when I come here, we've got basic info and project info. So again, I can say, well, okay, you can change those details, but these details are read only.
Right.
And then when it comes to those sections, so you've got quite a granular level of control. And then when you add users, you then just say, okay, well, which template am I assigning to this user? So then for that particular job role, you've created one user management template, the permission template, and then whenever you hire someone in that position, you just apply that template, and then that's they're the permissions they've got.
Perfect.
Well, are we pretty much done on this bit. I mean, obviously there's more work to do on building out the system, but I think it might be nice to do that over the next week, and then just do a quick show and tell of the previous week's case study before we launch into the next one.
Yeah.
You happy with that, William?
Yeah, it's very good. Thank you.
Okay, so if we perhaps catch up tomorrow and have a chat about the next step and what we build out more, and do that offline, and then go from there.
Sounds good to me.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks for everyone who stuck with us till the end, and stay tuned. Same time next week for both the finished result of what we started building today, and obviously the next case study, which we'll get into.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
William.
guys.
Thanks, William.
Bye now.
Be in touch. Bye now.
Bye-bye.